Agenda today again, and thank you for coming. I'd like to welcome you to the Senate Tax Committee. We do have several conferees. We're going to go ahead and get started. I do not have any, I actually do have one request for a bill introduction, and it is mine, to name a portion of Highway 69 after Ken Brock, who recently passed away. He was instrumental in getting that highway into a 4-lane highway. Any questions? Any? No. Okay, it's, we don't take seconds, but that's great.
Then let's just, don't you ask us if we're going to?
We ask, what we do is.
Sorry, we do seconds in my committee.
No, that's fine. I'm great. Each committee does it different, but I am so glad to know that she is supporting it. And what we do in this committee for bill requests is we ask for questions, and then we ask if there's any objection. And if there is no objection, then we will make the bill request. So are there any objections to the bill request? Seeing none, we'll make the request. Thank you, committee. Let's just start. We'll open the hearing on Senate Bill 196. I do have several conferees that want to testify, so we're going to limit conferees to less than 2 minutes each. Please be brief and not repeat what previous one said unless you want to say, I echo their thoughts. We do understand there's a lot of, if there's new information, we absolutely want it in front of the committee. And for those of you that don't know, we did have an informational hearing on this yesterday. In fact, I advise you to go out and look at the hearing and the data that was presented. So committee, I'll open the hearing, and Amelia, will you give us an overview?
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Senate Bill number 196 relates to taxation and would reinstate transfers to the local ad valorem tax reduction fund, which we commonly refer to as the LAVTRF. The bill itself was introduced last session in 2023, and at that time it would have amended KSA 2022 SUP 792959 to reinstate making transfers from the State General Fund to the LAVTRF after fiscal year of 2023, and in the aggregate amount of 3.63% of the total sales and compensating use taxes that are credited to the State General Fund during the preceding calendar year. And that is what Eddie gave you a little bit of that in his presentation yesterday, explained that that was the original formula, or one of the formula that is in the statute, but then currently it has exceptions. For your information, the statute was amended in 2023. So current law actually provides for no transfers during fiscal years 23, 24, and now 25. And then beginning in 2026 would begin 2 transfers per year of $27 million. The bill would take effect from and after publication in the statute book. And because there was an amendment to the statute last year, if this bill were to proceed, we would need to at least make a technical amendment to bring in the current version of the statute. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Amelia. Committee, any questions? Seeing none, thank you. Our first conferee is Senator Pittman. Welcome to the Tax Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, committee, for hearing this bill. I really am very appreciative for having the hearing yesterday and for having this informational, or the hearing today. I'll be brief. We as senators know that we had some tough times back during the recession and afterwards. This statute was put in place back decades ago and was working really well. It was in the spirit of partnership between cities and states and counties in the state. And when our times became tough at the state level and we needed to have them tighten their belts, they did so. We stopped the transfers back in around 2008, and they tightened their belts and we proceeded. And we had a number of years where the state budget was was rough, but now we're at a new time. We're at a time where we've stabilized the budget, and now the cities are feeling that pinch. Our citizens are feeling that pinch. Inflation is high. We're growing as a state, which is fantastic. Property values are going up, and we're hearing a lot about property taxes. This is one way, not the silver bullet, but a way we can help our cities and our counties keep that burden of property tax low. So I appreciate the hearing. I encourage you to vote this out favorably, and I thank you for, once again.
You're welcome. Committee, any questions? Seeing, yes, we're gonna, that's why 2 minutes on each conferee. Senator Hall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Pittman, thanks for being here today. Just a couple questions for you. Number one, as I represent a portion of Leavenworth County myself, my understanding of Leavenworth is that obviously you have a significant federal property up there, installations and things like that.
Absolutely.
So obviously you've got the county and the cities providing services in essence for structures and associated personnel, whatever, and those are not on your tax roll.
Right.
My question to you would be is that, number one, do you think LAVTRF is particularly appropriate for those counties or cities, those taxing jurisdictions where you don't have a substantive enough tax base as it is to fund services? I mean, I guess my question is that, do you feel like because of the lack of the tax base, because of all the federal stuff, it's supporters are citing, do you think that's especially critical for counties like Leavenworth to have that versus, say, a county that has much more commercial on the roll, residential on the roll?
Thanks for the question. Absolutely. I'll be brief. Yes, yes, and yes. We have, no, they're going to talk to it today. I'll let them talk to it. We have a number of folks from the Leavenworth County, but is it particularly impactful on counties like mine, Leavenworth County, where the tax rolls, they're funded by property tax, and the amount of land available just isn't there.
Okay, the second question real quick, then I'll stand down, Madam Chair, if I
We
can.
have to limit senators on time
Okay,
too,
okay.
but go ahead for a second question.
And just the second question is that, you know, the governor, she's got a proposal. My understanding is your proposal is different. What I want to know from you is that the way the LATVF fund is set up to be replenished and distributed back, or what my question is that, do you think it is optimally structured to do that? Or is there, should we look at basically fine tuning that to optimize for those geographic locales that don't have that tax base?
Look, wouldn't it be great to go back and look at it and see what is the percentage of tax base available and see if we can help remedy, you know, those counties that have that situation? I don't think we need to do that with this bill, though. I think we should just go back to the way it was working. I think it worked well. Keep it as a percentage basis, not as a fixed amount, and continue from there to see how that goes. And then after a few years, if it's not working, it's not working. We can revisit it then.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, committee. We are going to have to go down to a minute for each conferee now.
Right.
I apologize.
Sorry about that. Thank you so much.
Okay, that's okay. Thank you. Committee, our next conferee, Jeff Culbertson from Leavenworth County.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. The state tells all 105 counties that they have only property tax to fund their budgets. No income tax, sales tax, severance tax, or any other real source of income. Almost all property tax. Leavenworth County only has 32,000 property taxpayers, but we have over 100,000 income taxpayers, over 100,000 sales taxpayers. If the county could tap into these other resources, the result would be lower property taxes. Just a 1% income tax would cut your property taxes in half. LAVTR does exactly this. It shifts some of the weight off of property tax and puts it on sales tax. Instead of killing it, we should be enhancing it. Our county taxpayers would see almost a 10% reduction in their property taxes. Only LAVTR offers this kind of impact. You guys would be heroes. Leavenworth County is 40% property tax exempt. 60% are paying more than their fair share, exactly like Senator Holland just pointed out. LAVTR would instantly give us some significant relief. The state doesn't trust the counties to use the funds to lower property tax. The bill says it has to be used for that or they don't get it. Senate Bill 13 would double check that it is, and many counties and cities have already passed resolutions to do so. Please help us lower property tax. by returning the LAVTR funds. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, Jeff. Would you stand for questions?
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm going to make a really quick statement. We had data that was passed out yesterday that contradicts some of the statements that you made. So you had said 10% cut. That's not quite accurate. I'm not going to be able to call out every conferee on this. I am going to refer people to the data that was handed out yesterday.
And the 10%, I'm referring to Leavenworth County.
I
Those are the figures
understand.
that we came up with.
And with the data that we had out, Leavenworth County, if the 1.5 the LAVTR, it would be 1.3 mil. That is not a 10% cut in taxes.
That is not.
So I'm not going to debate. We're going to run out of time. We've got a lot of conferees to get to. I just wanted to, we need to make sure we have accurate information. But I appreciate you, Jeff, and I appreciate your comments. So thank you very much.
I'll put some information together and get that to you and double check that.
That would be great. And email it to the committee.
Yes, ma'am.
That would be wonderful. Thank you so much, Jeff.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm jumping to the next conferee that's from Leavenworth also. Terry Lois Gregory, the Honorable Terry Lois. I had the pleasure of serving with her.
Who is now Terry Lois Mashburn. Yes. Good morning, Senators. It was my honor to serve in the House of Representatives with then freshman Representative Tyson. Our leadership brought us a resolution to support that was a lie. The 50 members of the 150 caucus decided that one by one we would go to our leadership and say, hey, you know that resolution? We're going to be voting nay on that. The morning of the intended vote, the representative carrying the resolution instead went to the well and read it as a point of personal privilege. We prevailed in our defiance of leadership with righteous anger. As Register of Deeds for Leavenworth County, I have to file the deeds of friends of mine who, although they don't want to, are selling their home because they can no longer afford the property taxes and are moving out of Kansas. Please do not eliminate LAVTR, but fund it to help us with our property taxes. Thank you for your service. I'll stand for questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I apologize, Mashburn. Our next conferee we'll go to is Commissioner Mike Stephen. I always mispronounce that. I apologize, Mike, and welcome to the committee.
It's German, you know, the way we pronounce the names sometimes. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak here today, and I really appreciate your service to the state of Kansas. And since I'm going to do this really quickly, I'm going to skip down in my testimony, which you should have a copy of, but I want to read the last paragraph on the first page. Again and again, I hear the elderly, those on fixed incomes, and those with limited incomes say to the same thing. Commissioner Steben, we're going to be taxed out of our homes. Others say, Mike, if something is not done, we're going to have to move out of the state. Folks, we have a tax problem. The Titanic has hit the iceberg, and the responsibility to solve this is on you folks. The county commissioners cannot solve it. That being said, we have had a task force. I represent the southern and western part of the county, and we've had a property tax task force. Local citizens have met, and we've made a list, and some of this, we've had Senator Pittman and Senator Tyson have attended a couple of these meetings, and there was a long list, but I just want to read two things. We agree with a cap on property taxes, the 4% cap that the Senate passed, and LAVTR funding.
Thank you. We'll stand for questions. So I would ask you of, there has been talk of removing the 1.5 mil that the state collects on property taxes. And that would actually be a greater decrease for your Leavenworth County constituents than the LAVTR 1.3 mil.
Well, like I said, the task force has looked at this as far as there's no one single answer, and I would have to look at the statistics if that's correct. I don't think necessarily there's opposition to that, except for the fact that I think the caveat is that this hasn't been funded for all these years, and we have a question, why haven't they funded it?
Understand, but you said the onus is on us, and the 1.5 mil would be a greater decrease to your concern.
It is, and the final thing is, if you can pass the cap, the 4% cap, it would do more for the people of Kansas and the taxpayers than anything else you could do. Let the voters decide, and everyone I've talked to says if the voters get a chance to vote, they'll vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Committee, any other questions? Seeing none. The last conferee from Leavenworth County is Maddie Welduck. Welcome to the committee, Maddie.
Good morning. Maddie is unfortunately unable to join us, so I'm Crystal with the City of Basel.
Well, I apologize, and I should have recognized.
No, it's totally okay. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here in person this morning. On behalf of the City of Basel and Mayor Drennan and all of our council members who are present today and those viewing online, we commend this committee for addressing this important issue. It affects all of our property owners statewide, and we are grateful to be here to express our support. You have our written testimony, which I, of course, will not read, but I do hope you've had an opportunity to take a look at that. Thank you so much for your time. We respectfully request a vote of approval in support of Senate Bill 196, moving out of this committee today. And that is all. Thank you.
Thank you. Committee, any questions? It is my understanding that the Baser also passed a resolution supporting the 1.5 mil.
Yes, ma'am.
Removing it and removing the LAVTR language. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Was that part of your testimony also?
Yes, we provided you we passed 2 resolutions, and we provided you those resolutions in our written testimony.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for your work. Committee, any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Tell Maddie, thank you also.
Of course.
Thank you, Crystal. Okay, committee, we'll go back to the list. Representative Vic Miller, welcome to the Tax Committee.
You mean welcome back? Thank you, Madam Chair. You have my written testimony. Given the shortage of time, I want to just highlight a couple important points. One, a bill, I think identical to the one before you, was introduced by me and a number of people on the other side of the building last year. We have another proposal. We've revamped that one, and we intend to be introducing it any day now. We should have over 40 sponsors, and several of those are members of the majority party, I'm pleased to say. I think that underscores the significance of this problem, that we do have a bipartisan approach to it. Good news and bad news, Madam Chair. The good news is you're right. The bad news is this is not as generous as what some think it is. In its current form, the math is easy. Let me give you the numbers so everyone can do it. There's $5,778,069,258 of property taxes in the state. This provides $54 million of relief. On average, that would be 0.9% reduction. Because it's so small, our version that we will be introducing will limit the relief to where we think it should be directed, and that's on residential property only, and it will revert back to the original bill, the original statute of 3.63% of sales and compensating use taxes. That, if applied in that way, would still only give a 4.2% reduction to homeowners on average, but it would be much more generous than the bill in front of you. We think it should be more generous than we were talking about a year ago. We have more affordability at our level, and the problem is more acute than it was a year ago, as you all understand, and everybody that owns a home across Kansas understands. I would love to stand here and talk for an hour, but I appreciate the time constraint, and thank you for the opportunity. Hope to see you again when that bill moves across the aisle. Thank you. Absolutely.
I think I'll let that keep ringing to remind. I'm kidding. Sorry, guys. I don't use my timer very often. So, committee, any questions? I do have a couple of questions. One is, are you aware that in 2022, legislation was introduced to exempt $100,000 on the household for the 20 mil that the state collects?
Yes, I introduced it.
No, I introduced it too.
On the House side.
Yeah,
On the House side, actually, I think at that time it was 65, that we were raising it to 65. We have a bill, again, I didn't mention it today, but we have a bill to raise it to 100,000 this year, and I agree with, that's in the
Actually-
governor's tax plan.
Just for history's sake, Representative Sean Tarwater brought the idea to me, and I introduced a bill at 100K, and otherwise that hadn't been talked about at all. So we do know that this is a property tax issue that we are definitely trying to address. The transparency bill did some of it, but we do have more work to do. We've always known that. So thank you
No,
for
I
your time.
fully support that proposal. That's exactly what we're going to introduce. The sad part is, when you do the math, it doesn't amount to that much real relief. We believe that's necessary in combination with the LAVTRF and another bill, which I won't go into. We have a full package because none of these bills in and of themselves is going to fully address the problem that homeowners are facing. But
No,
thank you.
as Senator Pittman said, no silver bullet, but all this combined is the silver bullet. And as Representative Steiben mentioned, the taxable value limit, the constitutional amendment, will have more impact than any of the legislation that we're looking at now.
Well, I respectfully disagree with that point because it does nothing to lower taxes. It simply slows the future pain. It does not lower one single dime of people's taxes.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Move on. And I will get the last word on that later. The reason Mr. Miller was in my Senate district recently. It was kind of interesting. Please do. We're always welcome in the 12th Senate District. All of you are. We love having visitors. In fact, it's a great place to live. Anybody want to move there? A lot of rural opportunity zone there. Jay Hall, our next conferee. Or actually, I'm sorry, it would be Spencer Duncan. I apologize, Jay.
Sorry, Jay. Sorry. Cities first. Cities first.
Yeah.
I am Spencer Duncan, League of Kansas Municipalities. You have our testimony as to why I think this is a good time, especially with a budget surplus to fund. So I'm going to make just one quick point. And actually, this is the issue that weighs, I think, on the cities most, especially at the League. We have come to a point when it comes to the creation of tax policy where we are all operating in silos. We've become independent units of government that are making decisions that impact each other without actually sitting down and having conversations with one another about what the full impact of that is. That's not productive. That creates an us versus them mentality, and that's not going to get us to a good system of taxation for the state of Kansas. So we hope as a collective that cities, counties, the states understand this nexus, and we hope that as we move forward, not just in this discussion, but as I will probably stand before you many times this session, we are spreading that message to our cities. We hope that you keep in mind that collaboration and cooperation also, and know that we're ready to be here at the table. And so my last point will be to something in my testimony. This is a good year after more than 2 decades of not funding it with a surplus. Fund it, and we can come back in a year, and if we didn't meet your expectations, we will have some real recent data for you to say, nope, not gonna happen again, or it actually worked, let's move forward. Thank you. Excuse me.
Committee, any questions? I do have one for you. So there is no obligation for the county to pass this money on to the municipality? It's optional?
We believe that's correct. We're actually having that conversation with the Department of Revenue. Sadly, the conversation has been with revenue and even counties. It's been so long since it's funded, there's no institutional memory. We're literally trying to find people who remember how this was done to answer that question. So when we get a more clarification, hopefully next week or so, I'll let you know.
Thank you.
Yep.
Senator Erickson.
Sorry, Spencer. Another quick one. So you said, pass it, let's see if it works for a year. When it was funded in the past, did it do what it was intended to do?
We have spent several months digging through all the historical data, some of which we had to go get from KU and actually type in, so that's always fun. Yes, and I will send you a spreadsheet that we believe shows that when this was funded, it definitely had an impact on keeping mill levies down, and that once it wasn't, now, we can argue whether there was a direct correlation, but the numbers do show that there was at least some positive impact. Did some cities go rogue? Of course they did, but the majority of them use those funds to directly benefit property tax rates, in our opinion. I mean,
Lower property tax.
yes, on the mill levy. So I'll get you that data that we've compiled.
Would appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. And for the committee's information, we will be providing a graph that demonstrates if this would have been funded for the past 20 years, what the difference would have been if it would have all gone to property tax. And you'll see it's not the arrow that everybody thinks it is. It would have helped, but it's not the end-all, save-all. So committee, our next conferee is Jay Hall.
Jay Hall, Deputy Director for the Kansas Association of Counties. I want to make two very brief points. The first is on the back of my testimony, you will see there is the budgeting sheet, and I've circled where LAVTR pencils into that. Those are the number of deductions that you take out of the budgeted amount. And so you will see that the budgeted, or the amount that is collected from real estate taxes, LAVTR is subtracted from that amount so that the amount that's collected from real estate taxes actually go down. The second point I want to make is that this is not a new tax. LAVTR is collected directly from the sales tax portion that our citizens, our residents are already paying. So this is not a new tax. This is just something that is being used to offset property taxes at the local level. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for questions.
Thank you, Jay. Committee, any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Christine Ramirez, Wyandotte County. Christian, I am sorry. It does say Christian. That's what you get for glancing. Welcome to the Tax Committee.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairwoman Tyson and members of the committee. My name is Christian Ramirez. I represent the 3rd District of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas. I stand here in support of restoring the funding of LAVTRF. Us local governments, we've done our part. Some, we need to do more. I would say our government needs to do more our part of being able to hold the line. But it's a two-way street. We have our ability to regulate the mill rate. Up here is being able to provide what taxes and the valuations. We ask that you give us a chance to do our job, what we were elected to do. We know, as was been said, there were some rogue cities, rogue counties that didn't do what they were supposed to do with the funds. I make a commitment to this committee, if you vote to support and restore funding, I'll do what I can to ensure that my local government restricts the funding to just property tax relief. That's all our community wants, my district. I just stood for re-election, and every door that I knocked on, everybody wanted property tax relief. We're doing what we can in our local government, but at the same time, it's a balance. We have to lower property taxes, and we also have to provide goods and services to our community. It's a careful balance. So I ask that you work with us so that we can do what's best for our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Committee, any questions? Seeing none. So I'll ask you the same that I asked Commissioner Stephen. Wyandotte County, the current, if LAVTR was funded, the number that we had was 1.38 mil. So if we would do away with the statewide 1.5 mil, it would be a greater tax cut for your constituency.
It would be, but I believe if we funded LAVTR at 2, I can't remember, there was a calculator that the Kansas counties had put on. Sure, yeah, it could, but again, it's a multifaceted problem. There's many things that can be done to use to provide property tax relief, not just one.
Granted. Thank you. Any other questions? Senator Peck.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think I would know your answer from your testimony, but because of what we have heard yesterday and today, there is no requirement that any money from the LAVTRF that goes to counties is used to reduce property taxes. There's no statutory requirement. It can be used however you want. It's already been talked about rogue cities and counties. If we put some type of language into statute, if a county did not reduce their property taxes by an equal amount of whatever funds they received, that the next year they would receive nothing or there would be some type of a penalty or hammer, would that be something that you would recommend that we do to ensure that people have the same mindset as what you personally do?
I can only speak for myself and my county. I believe we would. It's a given, legislating is a give and take. It's, we have to, some have to give, some have to give and take. So I would say yes. I've had conversations with my fellow commissioner, my fellow colleagues on the commission, and they agree that if we need to find what's our path forward, we will take what we can, but at the same time, do not tie our hands too tight when we're trying to provide these funds. But yes, I can speak and say my county would more than likely be in support of that if that's what it takes. But again, don't tie our hands too tight.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other questions, committee? Seeing none, thank you. Next is Commissioner Bill Rippon. Welcome to the Tax Committee.
At a commission meeting, so I was a little late. I do have the 25 copies that you need. Fine, okay, I'll distribute those later. I wanted to say
Committee, I'll address this now. We don't usually do this. It's in the rules that the committee have the testimony 24 hours in advance to hand out, but we did make exceptions for this because of the weather this week and other issues that had gone on. And this is the first week of session. We know that it's rare to have this large of a hearing this quickly, but it's such an important topic. I've had it queued up for a while, so thank you.
once again, my name's Bill Rippon. Senator, thank you for this time today. I am in favor of this restoring the ad valorem tax relief. For Shawnee County, in my last calculator I looked at, it would have amounted to about $3 million for Shawnee County. But I'd also ask you to look at the County and City Revenue Sharing Fund. That's the CCRSF. That was actually even more beneficial to the county. If we would have that with my last calculator, it was about $5 million. Total with the ad valorem, it would be $8 million and some dollars. With that, I could have dropped property tax by $5 million, and we would have gladly done that. And if there was language in the bill that said it could only specifically be used for reduction of property tax, I'd be all for it. I think it'd be great. So, yes.
I'm doing the math in my head real quickly. I've got, yeah, but it's approximately 5. It's a little less, but okay.
It'd be really close. So anyway, but that's all I have. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Committee, any questions? Senator Peck.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Will you stand for questions, Commissioner?
Yes.
Senator Peck, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Since you brought up the topic of the City County Revenue Sharing Fund, and I know that's not the topic for today, but that has not been funded, correct?
That's correct.
For what period of time approximately?
I don't know how many years that's been that hasn't been funded, but it's.
I heard you say, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I heard you say that that would be more beneficial than the LAVTRF.
It's actually more money for us, yeah. It would be around $5 million for Shawnee County, where the ad valorem was around $3 million.
Thank you. And maybe the chair has some information or research.
I do, and we'll request that that be handed out by research. So,
With a,
not today, not today, by any means. Eddie's running double duty, you guys, today. So actually triple if you add what's going to go on this afternoon, but.
a $5 million reduction would be a significant reduction in our property tax, so.
Yes, it's much appreciated, and thank you. Any other questions, committee? Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you. Commissioner Rob Roberts from Miami County? He's not here? Okay. I'll refer you to his written testimony. Mike Taylor, Commissioner Mike Taylor. And you're not a commissioner, you're just with the association.
Yeah, you just promoted me, yes. I'm a lobbyist, not a commissioner. I do represent the Kansas County Commissioners Association, which is all 105 counties, the elected officials. That's 362 elected leaders across the state, representing virtually every citizen in the state of Kansas. And it's a very diverse group. It's Republicans, Democrats, rural, urban, and they do support Senate Bill 196. For 20 years, this critical funding has been denied, and we believe it's past time for the legislature to restore the spirit of the law and keep the promises made decades ago. And LAVTR, as was mentioned, isn't the only thing. It's the city-county revenue sharing, it's city-county highway fund. If you add it all up, in the 20 years, cities and counties have lost $3.5 billion in promised statutorily owed funding. And it doesn't stop there. If you think about it, in 2006, the property tax on commercial machinery and equipment was removed. And then in 2014, the mortgage revenue registration fee was removed. That had been enshrined in law since 1925. If you add all those up, it's billions of dollars that locals have lost. It's no reason that property taxes have had to go up. At the same time, keep in mind that counties perform on behalf of the state a number of mandated functions: district courts, jails, sheriffs, community corrections, mental health, register of deeds, vehicle registrations, elections, and tax collections are all functions performed by counties on behalf of the state, paid for by county taxpayers. So this money would be a help. And I'll clarify a little bit. If you take the formula of the 3.6, it would be $130 million, not 27. So that changes that calculation of the mill levies significantly, because the statute says 3.6% of the sales. So this bill only says 27 million, but it should, based on the formula, be 130 million. So that significantly changes the mill levy. So for Leavenworth County at the 130, it would be 3.5 mil reduction, not the 1.5. So I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
So is that documented in your testimony, the number that you just gave us?
I put on the back, actually, for some of your selected counties, what the mill levy would be based on the 3.6%.
That's fine. I just want to confirm, because we had numbers that were handed out yesterday that are a little bit in discrepancy. That's what's interesting about this statute. People may not realize it. There's language in two different places. And the governor has never proposed the 3.6%. She has always proposed the 54 million cap when and the funding of the LAVTR. So there's some expectations here that are just in different realms.
Sure.
So
Again, I would just encourage you to restore that partnership, as Spencer said, between locals and
at the 54 million or the 3.6?
just restore the partnership, period, on all kinds of levels, because I think lately counties and cities have become enemies of the state, not partners.
You know, we are not enemies. We are absolutely not enemies. And for anybody to use that terminology is inflammatory. I love my commissioners. In fact, I've got many, many good friends in the room here today, and I work with them to get good policy. In fact, I was the one that made the amendment to remove the lid so that we had local control on the transparency bill. We are not enemies. We want to work together to get good policy for the state of Kansas. Senator Holland, and then Senator Peck.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A question for you. I'm just curious, and just in the spirit of talking about homestead property tax relief, what is the level of awareness at the county level, at least, about a bill that this committee worked together bipartisan way to get out, HB 2259, I believe, that was basically it's the third rebate program, basically geared specifically for fixed income seniors and disabled veterans. It provides basically a de facto property tax cap on what seniors and disabled veterans have to pay. Is there an awareness out there of the counties that is even available for citizens to apply for?
I believe that we have tried through KAC. We've tried to educate county commissioners about that. We provided them information about it. That's about all I can say.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
If I may, Senator, I think it was 2239, but thank you for bringing that up.
2239. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. In 1922 or 2022. Yes. Senator Peck.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I appreciate county people and others coming before the legislature to advocate for their position. However, you're the third person that's a registered lobbyist, and it would appear to me that taxpayer dollars are being used to pay you to lobby us for more taxpayer dollars. Would not it be beneficial to local units of government to keep that money and not pay lobbying firms to appear before the legislature?
Well, I think that the county commissioners that I'm representing deserve to have a voice here. And this is unusual that so many of them were able to show up. So I think having the ability to have someone keep an eye on things and report back to them what's going on is very beneficial to them and well worth what they're spending, which isn't a lot.
I've got a great relationship with many county commissioners in Senate District 15. We have regular communication. They do their best to stay abreast of what legislation is being proposed without having lobbyists that they hire. And it just kind of bothers me, Madam Chairman, that we have had lobbyists come before us who are paid with taxpayer dollars asking for more taxpayer dollars. That's just a statement, not a question. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
No, thank you, Senator. You bring up some good point. We may need to look at transparency on that. Committee, any other questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
So committee, that is our last proponent to testify in person. Is there anybody else that would like to testify as a proponent? Okay, I will give you 1 minute. Please state your name. This is very unusual.
My name is Richard Paz, ma'am. I am a resident of rural Leavenworth County, and I did submit this before the deadline, so I presumed I was going to be allowed entry.
It's fine.
But anyway, ma'am, bottom line is a lot of folks are angry about rising property taxes, but what underlies my letter is the history. This situation parallels the tax rebellions of the 1960s and 1970s that culminated in Proposition 13 in California. You have a massive state surplus, and then you have the arguments going back and forth on these taxes and the minutia. But what folks didn't realize was when they got those property taxes, their services were undercut underneath them. It was a no-win situation. I see that here today. So what I'm saying is, yes, a lot of people are angry about rising valuations, but a key component of that, a socioeconomic stabilizer, as I see it, is LAVTR, because we cannot undercut our local governments, and I see that. I looked in their faces. I've been in big organizations like that. And you can talk back and forth on that, but the tax rebellion you'll get is not the one you're thinking of by trying to undercut and remove those services, saying that we have uncontrolled government spending. Local governments are subject to the inflationary pressures like individuals and businesses. So we need to take that in consideration and not to repeat the mistakes of the 1960s and 1970s.
Could you please spell your name for the record?
P-A-Z, last name, first name is Richard. I'm a retired
Would you spell
colonel.
your last name too? I just want to.
P-A-Z.
Okay, so he can
Yes,
make
ma'am.
it for the record and then make sure we have your written testimony.
Got it.
Wonderful. Committee, any questions for this gentleman? Senator Holland.
Real quick, and I just, maybe since you're with here the rest, I want to be sure, I want to really clarify this. Are we talking about a concern about all property taxes in general that the LAVTR is supposed to address? Are we concerned about residential property tax relief that the LAVTR is supposed to address?
Extensively homeowners, but it's symptomatic of the downward pressures that tax cuts have taken starting in the 60s that have left the burden of providing services at the local level. So residential property taxes, but that's what your all jobs are for, to figure out where those taxes should go. But just please do not play politics with special exemptions. Go to where it impacts everyone the most, as Governor Kelly said.
Thank you. Very good. Any other questions, committee? Seeing none, thank you very much. So committee, we'll turn to, is there anybody that is neutral on the testimony? Seeing none. We do have opponents. We're going to turn to the, yeah, we're not going to have time for the WebEx people today. I apologize, guys. We took up too much time. The opponents need time to testify. So first up is Michael Austin. Michael, you will have different information, so I will start it at 2 minutes.
Hello.
Welcome to the Tax Committee.
Thank you for the courtesy. I appreciate that, Madam Chairwoman. Members of the committee, my name is Michael Austin. I'm the Legislative Director for Americans for Prosperity. As we've heard from many discussions today, I think we can all agree that property taxes are unfortunately a problem in this state, and they're too high. But if there's one thing I would love for you all to take from my testimony today, and I think we've all realized we're on the same page, especially from your comments and questions here at this committee, is that how we reduce taxes matters just as much as the tax reduction themselves. And when it comes to that, I believe that reinstating the LAVTRF Transfers unfortunately sets a dangerous precedent and encourages what I call in my written testimony a moral hazard. Now, of course, you're probably going to have other conferees talk about what happened in the past, and I personally believe that past behavior is a great predictor for future behavior. But just like how we, cry about the federal government providing subsidies to universities, and universities turn around and push high tuition rates, those same types of moral hazards can happen with the LAVTRF. Unfortunately, under no issue with our many friends within the county and city governments, it unfortunately provides a cover for high sales taxes, high property taxes, and it doesn't really provide that much of an incentive to really control that spending. And as Senator Peck had provided comments earlier today, there really is no enforcement mechanism on this bill as it is currently written. So with that being said, it creates a perverse incentive that I don't think is what we want to see happen in Kansas. Definitely, we don't want to see it with homeowners, and we want Kansans to stay here, but we have to reduce taxes the right way. So hopefully I'll save enough time for further conferees in the future.
Thank you, Michael. Committee, any questions? Senator Holland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Michael, thanks for your stuff today. I appreciate the dialogue, particularly about moral hazard. Let me ask you a question. We look at all the hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars that the state, through its local entities or itself, provides, say, commercial property tax exemptions for commercial development. Would you not view that as a moral hazard?
The amount of, let me repeat that, want to make sure I understand. The amount of incentives for commercial property tax reduction, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, right. For a developer doing a project or whatever.
We
that as a moral hazard.
It does create perverse incentives. So we at Americans for Prosperity, we will of course want to see a broad, low rate as much as can be humanly done. We don't necessarily like it when government is in the business of picking which businesses get the lower tax reduction and which businesses or families have to subsidize that with higher rates.
So my point, Madam Chair, is basically I see this potentially as a correction to offset the moral hazard that special interests have in setting up our tax structure as it is. So I just want to get your 2 cents on that. Thank you.
Sure thing. I appreciate that. And what I will say is that you can't fix a broken hammer with a hammer. You can't use government to fix the problem that government has created. You need to take a step back.
Committee, any other questions? Michael, I would, you made a comment that history can be a past predictor. I hope that we learn from our mistakes and do not repeat mistakes of the past. But thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Committee, next is Eric Stafford. Welcome to the Tax Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. Good morning, Eric Stafford on behalf of the Kansas Chamber. I think Michael summarized it there at the very end really well. You can't fix government with government, and it's disingenuous to give false hope to voters that the state can actually do something about local governments increasing property tax burden on homeowners and businesses. I'm actually 2024, I figure property tax is going to be a big year. I've got my personal property tax statement with me that I'll be carrying. I actually emailed my commissioner who's here in the room and testified as a proponent today, so I look forward to talking with him after. But I don't think the state of Kansas has anything to do with the 18, 15, 12, 45, 18, 18% increases in my taxes on my statement. But to take sales tax money to fund local government, Shawnee County was said to have a $3 million benefit under this proposal. Our taxes in 2024 for property taxes are going from $98 million to $104 million collectively. So it would half the increase that local governments are putting on homeowners and businesses. To Senator Holland's point about incentives, that is the marketplace. We aren't crazy about incentives either. And until everybody disarms, then you're going to continue to have them. Because one community might say we're not going to do them anymore, but then their competitor next door to the east or west or north or south is going to say, hey, we'll do them, we'll welcome your business. So if that's the preference of the state to go that route, then it can be a level playing field. But ultimately, funding government by government through taxpayer dollars is not an efficient use, and we believe that tax rates should just be lowered and give that savings directly to taxpayers instead of other units of government.
Thank you. Committee, any questions? Senator Holland.
I'll be very quick. Yeah, so that's my whole point. I mean, I'm reminded there's this politician in Louisiana, he said, don't tax you, don't tax me, tax that fella behind the tree. And the issue is that state government and locals, we all set tax policy. And what you're seeing here is residential property owners, okay? They're tired of being on the receiving end of the increases.
If you read our testimony, you'll see that business owners are too, because we're assessed at 2.5 times the rate that property owners are. So we can have a $100,000 building, commercial building, that's going to have 2.5 times the property taxes as a $100,000 house. So don't think that we all have some sweetheart deal and we're all rich and greedy business owners. I know that's how you like to label us, but you know, small businesses are suffering too.
I'm a small business owner. I own 4 businesses, okay? Don't lecture me. I actually run businesses.
Committee, please.
Madam Chair.
Please, thank you. We will be respectful of committee members and conferees. Thank you. I do give an example of a building, a commercial building in Iola, Kansas, valued at $1 million. Property taxes approximately $62,000 a year. That similar building in Utah is about $15,000 a year. We have a problem in Kansas, and we are trying to address it. This committee is. So thank you. Any other questions for this conferee? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Committee, next conferee is Dave Traubert, Kansas Policy Institute. Welcome to the Tax Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'll refer you to a chart in my testimony that shows the last time that LAVTR was funded, it didn't work. The last 5 years, the average county property tax increase was 7.6%. The last 5 years now, 3.9%. You can give money to local governments, but if there is no restriction on how much they can increase their spending or increase their dollars of tax, it won't work. It just, the example will be, well, it would have been higher if you hadn't given us that money. People pay their property taxes with dollars, not with mill rates. We need to focus on the dollars. And there's nothing in this bill that would limit the amount of dollars of property tax that cities or counties can collect. It really comes down to choices made by local governments of how much they're going to spend. That's what determines how much they're going to tax. And I have a chart in my testimony that shows some comparisons, like in Douglas County, and this is for all local governments within the county, except for education. Between 1997 and 2022, Douglas County local governments took in 428% more property tax dollars. That's over 4 times the increase in inflation and population. You see others like Cheyenne was almost 6 times. But on the other side of the table, you see different choices made in different counties. Grant County only had a 30% property tax increase. Stevens County, 44%. Hamilton County, 45%. Choices of how they spend can make a difference. And I'll refer you also to, on the back of my testimony, there's a comparison of Cherokee County with Leavenworth County. Now, Leavenworth County has a 337% property tax increase. Cherokee County is 110. But the most important part about Cherokee County is that it went down 31% in the last 2 years. How did they do that? They examined their spending. They went through an exercise, a performance-based budgeting exercise. They actually invited us to come in and help them examine their spending. We didn't tell them what to do. We just facilitated a conversation, and the county commissioners found ways that they were able to reduce their spending, and that's what they used to reduce their property tax. So with that, Madam Chair, I'll be happy to stand for questions.
Thank you. Senator Holland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. David, I want to clarify. Were you just trying to compare, was it Cheyenne County to Leavenworth? Cherokee County to Leavenworth.
I compared the change in property tax growth. It has nothing.
Do you know what's going on in northeast Kansas?
Yes, I do.
So how can you even stand here with a straight face and start basically denigrating the Leavenworth County Commissioners when they're seeing a massive influx of population, they're seeing a massive influx of business growth, and unfortunately for our poor rural counties, folks are fleeing because the economic opportunities there are drying up. How do you put apples and oranges together and pass judgment on counties aren't doing their job? And keep in mind, citizens vote those commissioners in or out. Okay? They're held accountable. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator, it's unfortunate that you characterize that as an attack. It's stating facts. Well, Senator, if you would allow me to respond. We completely understand what's going on with population increases. That's why we compare tax increases to inflation plus population. And it is about 3 times as much what they've done in Leavenworth County. Now this is, and it's not just the current commissioners. We don't denigrate anyone for their choices, but it still is a choice, and they could choose to examine their spending. And it's a standing offer. We'll go anywhere, city or county, and help them work through that exercise. It's a really fascinating exercise. The difference is whether you want to look at your spending. And if you do, you will find, because the budget process, I mean, even the state of Kansas has a performance-based budget process on paper, but it's not a real one because there's no one saying we will do it. The Cherokee County Commissioners took the initiative to say, let's look at our spending. We've never looked at it that way. This isn't denigrating, it's just a simple matter of you can choose and you can find ways to save money. It's not cutting service, it's operating more efficiently.
Thank you. Senator Peck.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Traubert, I appreciate the fact that it sounds like Kansas Policy Institute is willing to assist any county that would call on you to look at their budgets. So I would encourage counties to do that. But Kansas Policy Institute does a great job with research. I have relied on your organization for a lot of information. Have you looked at, by the way, we're talking about the LAVTRF, but it seems like it's morphed into property taxes. Has KPI looked at what property taxes were before the cap went away in 1999? And I know that goes way, way back, and some people don't even know what I'm talking about. But we used to have a cap on property taxes for counties. And when I first got into the legislature, that was not long after that cap had gone away. My understanding is that cap was very valuable in keeping property taxes down. Has KPI looked at that, and do you have anything you could tell us briefly?
Sure. Thank you, Senator. Okay. First of all, if just want to mention that if anyone does, any counties or cities want our help, we don't charge for that. It won't cost them anything. Okay. We have looked at it. There is evidence that a cap would make a difference, that it did make a difference, and when the cap was removed, that property taxes exploded.
That was quicker than I thought. Thank you. So committee, thank you very much. Any other opponents? And if you do, please send the testimony to committee assistant. I am going to close the hearing on Senate Bill 196. We have 1 minute left. Actually, we don't. We've lost the room already. But committee, I'm going to draw your attention to a handout from Eddie. Thank you for putting it together. It was a reminder of what was in CCR 169 and CCR 8 from last year. I want the committee to be fully prepared for anything that comes before us. Thank you, guys. Is there any other business to be brought before the committee? Without that, we're adjourned. Thank you.